Pursuant to the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, October 20th, the committee is meeting to have a briefing session with the Chief Science Advisor of Canada, Dr. Mona Nemer. Welcome, Dr. Mona Nemer. Thank you for appearing before the committee. I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either Floor, English, or French. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Thank you, Dr. Nemer, for appearing before the committee. And you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will go into round of questioning by the members of this committee. Thank you, and you can please begin.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, bon après-midi.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you here today. To start, I would like to thank all members who participated in our Science Meets Parliament event last week. It is important that we continue to build greater connections between parliamentarians and our science community.
With some of our brightest young scientists who came from all over Canada to participate in this year's edition of Science Meets Parliament. They were thrilled by their experience that helps them appreciate your important work and learn how their research and expertise can support our parliamentarians and benefit our country. Over the 8 years that I have served in this role, the world has changed in profound ways. Technologically, we're in the midst of a transformation driven by artificial intelligence, quantum computing, genomics, and clean energy innovation. Geopolitically, we're witnessing a shifting landscape and a global recognition that science and technology are deeply intertwined with national security and sovereignty. Economically, nations are competing not only for natural resources and markets, but for the talent, data, and intellectual capacity that drive innovation and growth. These changes bring both opportunities and challenges. They demand that we adapt quickly, make evidence-informed decisions, and strengthen the systems that allow us to respond effectively. Science is central to that effort. It helps us detect emerging risks, develop new technologies, and craft solutions that improve our social and economic resilience, from health and food security to energy and digital sovereignty. But resilience does not mean isolationism. True resilience comes from connections, from collaboration among countries, sectors, and disciplines. Whether we're mapping the Arctic, monitoring oceans, or developing AI standards, no nation can do it alone. International collaboration helps us ensure that discovery benefits everyone and reinforces our reputation as a trusted and constructive global partner. En même temps, la collaboration doit
At the same time, collaboration must be grounded in a strong domestic foundation. If we want to remain at the forefront of innovation, we must have a long-term strategy that allows us to invest in Canada's science enterprise, in people and skills, in infrastructure, and in the institutions that turn ideas into sustainable impact. That means supporting fundamental research as well as applied research, enabling interdisciplinary approaches, and ensuring that our data and research are managed responsibly. At the same time, we should safeguard the intellectual property generated through discovery and research activities and improve its translation into innovative products, processes, and services.
On our domestic and international efforts that have, over the past year, supported Canada's G7 presidency and global engagement while providing the best advice to our government for important national issues such as biodiversity conservation, research data protection, emergency preparedness, and the science needed for avian flu management. Science is one of Canada's greatest strategic assets. It can fuel our economy, enhance our global standing, and enable us to meet the challenges of our time with both confidence and compassion. Je me réjouis de poursuivre ma collaboration.
I look forward to continuing working with you to strengthen Canadian science, to build resilience at home, and to ensure that Canada remains a trusted partner in global research and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Nemar. We will now proceed to our round of questioning, and we will begin our 6-minute round with MP Ho. MP Ho, you will have 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Nemar, let's begin with the basics. As Chief Science Advisor, are you the head of an agency, a government agency?
No, I'm not the head of a government agency.
Okay. So do you make any regulatory decisions that are going to be implemented by this government?
I don't make decisions. I'm an advisor. I provide advice on policies and sometimes implementations.
So you don't oversee any operational files? You don't? Okay.
I don't.
So according to published sources, you earn $393,000 per year. Is that number correct? About ballpark?
Sorry, the number refers to what?
$390,000. That's your salary. Is that correct?
My salary is the bracket of my salary is public information. Yes.
Okay. So for that level of compensation, what exactly are Canadian taxpayers paying you to do? I just want to get an understanding of that.
Well, I think that's a very good question, sir. And what the Canadian public is paying for is an independent advisor that's functioning in a transparent and trustworthy manner, that's providing unbiased advice to government and putting them actually in the public domain. They're actually funding an office that provides a challenge function for government, and let me tell you that we need more and not less of that. And it's also supporting Canada's international engagement, making sure our government has the latest information to make decisions.
Here. So according to the staffing directory, your office is made up of 24 employees. Is that number correct, or around that ballpark?
Yes, that's about correct.
So what's the total operating budget of your office, including travel, staff, everything, per year?
It's under $4 million.
Under $4 million. So your office, I don't think appears to publish any performance audits. You just said it doesn't make any kind of mandatory recommendations, and it does not oversee any federal agency. You're not a head of an agency. So what exactly are your sort of key performance indicators?
Well, first of all, let me perhaps, help you appreciate the position by saying that all peer countries have a chief science advisor. I guess they must all feel that this is a helpful position for government.
I want to understand, how do taxpayers measure your performance specifically, not just the fact that it exists in other countries?
Okay, so I was in my appointment, I was appointed at what's called good behavior, and I don't get any bonus pay. And it was, done this way so that I guess to maintain the independence of the office, so I don't have to provide the advice that the minister or the prime minister wants to hear, and that truly function in an unbiased manner.
I understand the independence of it, but okay, so let's move on and let's talk about deliverables and transparency. In the private sector, for this level of senior executive compensation, people are held to weekly deliverables, action items, active reports, performance metrics. So what exactly did you accomplish in the last week?
Well, sir, I guess I have to maybe explain how we function, because we provide advice to the government, and
did you provide any advice in the last week or last couple weeks?
Yes, absolutely. I've provided advice in the past week to the Minister of Industry and to the Prime Minister.
And what did that accomplish?
It's not my job, to see how well they, take up or not my advice. Because if I were to do this, then I think that it will skew completely the work that I do. But over the years, I have evidence that my advice has impact, that what we do has impact on Canadians. And of course, it was best illustrated during the COVID pandemic. But there are a number of other examples of this. We've put out
that's okay. I don't want to go back to the pandemic. So just the National Research Council was uncovered that it spent $61,000 on rooftop patio furniture. Are you aware of that?
No.
Do you feel that $61,000 is a good use of taxpayer money on rooftop patio furniture?
Sir, I'm not in the operations, and no one asked me, to give advice on these kind of expenses.
You may not make the decision on the patio furniture, but do you think it's a good use of money for $61,000?
I can't quite comment, because I don't know in what context it was. For all I know, it may have been in the context of a, field scientific project or.
It was definitely not for research. It was for like a building that had rooftop patio furniture, and it cost $61,000. I mean, if you were running your office, would you spend $61,000 on rooftop patio furniture?
Point of order.
Point of order, please. Yes, Mr. McKenna.
Thank you. I feel this is not within the purview of this witness and her role as a science advisor. I would suggest that we want to keep our questions in relation to her purview.
Okay, thank you. Yes, you have 2 seconds left.
I just.
No, he had a point of order. I've taken it. You have 2 seconds left. Okay, so we will now proceed to MP McKelvey for 6 minutes. Please go ahead. I would request all the members to be respectful to our witness today and ask the questions about her mandate and everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for joining us here today to share more about your portfolio and what it is that you do. I was wondering if you could speak to some of the engagement activities that you do with the Canadian public. And last night I was at the L'Oreal Women in Science Awards, and someone pointed out to me that you had a youth council. So I was wondering if you could share what the Youth Council does, what their mandate does, and why it's so important that we are engaging youth in science here in Canada.
Yes, thank you for the question. Indeed, I do quite a bit of outreach in my position, and I think it's really important to have a ongoing dialogue with the community, with the public, and certainly with the youth. The Youth Council is a very important part of the office. We have now the third cohort. Actually, it's the third cohort. They're young Canadians between the ages of 18 and 30 from across the country. They come from different disciplines. Some of them are still studying, others have jobs. And they give, the idea is for them to give us their perspective, the perspective of the youth on the work that we're doing and the advice that we're providing to government. So we make them participate in a lot of the work that we're doing, but they also do their own sort of project. Every group decides to do their own project. The new cohort has not determined yet what they're going to do. They just started. But the previous one, they did a very interesting report on the youth perspective on AI and the future. And the ones before, they did a very nice, actually, science technology strategy from a youth perspective.
Something that surprised me was that the French embassy had a science attaché. And so I had a conversation with him, and part of his role is promoting science that's happening in France. I'm just wondering if you could speak to some of the international collaborations that we have and why that is so important that we continue to reach out and work with the world.
Yes, it's absolutely essential that we continue to work with the world, and the good news is the world wants to work with us. They've always wanted to, and I think that with the geopolitics, that are taking place, it's fair to say that this interest has escalated. By the way, we don't have science attaché in most of our embassies, and that would be something that's quite actually helpful and useful to do because of the evident role of science and technology everywhere, including in trade and in diplomacy. So I find myself actually making up a little bit for that absence of this kind of expertise in our embassies outside of Canada. I give you an example of a very useful engagement that we did with the European Union, before the pandemic, that resulted in Canada being an associate member of the Horizon Europe program, meaning that Canadian researchers and SMEs have actually access to funds from the European Union, which are in the tens of billions of dollars. And that's, of course, very, very important. It gives us access to facilities, infrastructure, research infrastructure that are unique and for which we wouldn't have access otherwise. So, it's some of the sort of impact that you have. But the other thing also is that we talk about AI, for example, and AI standards internationally, and we need to have that kind of engagement from the research to the innovation side to make sure that actually, Canada's views and Canada's preferred options are also on the table internationally when these standards are being discussed. So these are just a couple of examples.
Our budget is, one of the components of it was attraction of international talent. How do you see your role fitting in that? What should we be looking for as we bring top minds to Canada? Are there gaps that we might want to fill, or what are your thoughts on that process?
Well, first of all, I was thrilled to see that this item was in the budget. I was asked for advice on the science ecosystem back in the spring, and I think that taking advantage, like I said, of the opportunities presenting itself to Canada because of the geopolitics around us is the right thing to do, especially at a time when we want to, reinvigorate our innovation system, our advanced manufacturing, etc., in addition to the other industries that we have. I'm certainly looking forward to welcoming some great minds, some perhaps Canadians that are now abroad, whether in the United States or elsewhere. And of course, they will contribute to the training of young researchers. They will contribute to perhaps closer collaborations also with the industry.
Sorry for interrupting, Dr. Nemmer. If you can quickly wind up, time is up for.
Yeah,
so if
sorry.
you can wind up in the 10 seconds, 15.
I can wrap up. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Dr. Nemmer. We have to keep track of the time. So I will now proceed to MP Blanchet-Juncker for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Nemmer, thank you for being with us. Your report for 2024 says the government doesn't have basic data on its own scientific community for training, expertise, the nature of positions. How could people trust a system that does not even know its own scientific capacity?
Welcome.
As I may have mentioned in the report, the government is composed of several entities. If you ask a department who their scientists are, they will know, but no one will know everyone. In terms of planning for the future. We know that we have the skills we need in the government and in the country. We felt it important to set up a framework which is more robust to know with whom we are working. We've been told that since 1994, all federal reports are asking that those loopholes be filled, but nothing has changed in the meantime. So I'm trying to understand, how can the system be credible when its own recommendations have been ignored for 3 decades? All I can tell you is that I hope that times are changing and that people are understanding even more the importance of data, maybe with digitalization, with all the AI algorithms, we'll be able to work in a more simplified way. The problem is not the lack of data. The problem is that there are many data systems that do not communicate, and that is the problem. While there's no communication, let me refer to the loopholes, but in your report you said that there's no data on the credentials and the backgrounds of federal scientists. It's like a state that wants to govern, but how can the government claim to govern in such a blind state? In that report, you also say concerning indicators on fairness for projects submitted in French, science in French, there is no indicator that could assess the fairness of assessments for projects that are presented in French. In your opinion, could you ensure that without the data, there is no Quebec scientist that will be favored? I cannot say that they will be favored or not, but for sure I work with figures and evidence. So we need data and we need follow-up. That is something that my office has been working on to see how we can help. Talking about reflections, you are recommending the linguistic factors when we collect scientific data. Why has none of these recommendations been applied or implemented by the government? I must say that you need to ask them that question. I have asked, but they don't answer, the government. I believe that my report, as you said, is very clear. There's a story behind it. Yes, indeed. We need to conclude the work we started. Now, still on the linguistic angle, the new Official Languages Act requires real bilingualism in federal institutions. In your opinion, how can the government respect that obligations if it's not collecting any data regarding language in its scientific data? Answer: I believe that at this time, guidelines have been sent to all associate deputy ministers working on science to make sure that there's bilingualism in our scientific frameworks. To your knowledge, have you recommended that the government assess all those factors? Clearly, scientists are part of the scientific community. Yes, we need to know what's going on. According to the OECD data and a Canadian Council, Canada is the only country whose scientific research funding has been dropping, and apparently public and private funding remains far below what is invested in other OECD countries. So in these conditions, how can the federal government be reducing the budgets of granting organizations while claiming that Canada will remain a leader in science? I think that we need a science and technology and innovation strategy that is clear and that states the country's objectives and that presents clear commitments when it comes to funding. and also priorities, impacts, and so on. And after that, there should be significant funding that supports the strategy so that we can move forward in a coordinated way, so that we should not be laggards in the G7. At least we should be somewhere in the middle in the OECD.
Blanche Jonka, we will now proceed to MP Mahal for our second round of 5 minutes. MP Mahal, you will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Nemmer. Thanks for your sparing time and come to this committee. At the outset, I want to clarify that in regards to Madam Chair's comments that we need to maintain respect and we need to maintain that decorum. Indeed, we need to maintain the decorum, but we also need to make sure that we ask the questions that Canadians want us to ask, and that's why they have chosen to bring us here. And that also speaks about accountability. When I make that comment, I mean that...
Definitely questions can be asked, but I just want that we should keep decorum.
Indeed. Yes. So the stake is higher. The total Canadian taxpayer money of $4.5 million is being given to your office. That includes your over $300,000 salary. So obviously there would be questions that you might not like, but I would still ask, but I will stay as polite as possible. I just wanted to lay that out in advance. So you mentioned in your testimony that you have been consulted by the PM office for this budget that just came up in November. Yes? There has been many changes related to SHRED, and did you have any input on those changes? Yes or no?
On SHRED, no.
Have you personally met Prime Minister Mark Carney since this election has happened?
I've been in the same room as him, but I haven't had a sit-down meeting with him. But I've engaged extensively with his office, including with his chief of staff.
Okay, fill me in and correct me if I'm wrong. Your job is to provide advice and have consultation with the Prime Minister. Is Prime Minister not interested in science? Is he not interested in sitting with you? Yes or no?
I don't think that he's not interested in science, and I think that the speech from the throne and the budget reflect this. Do I need to speak does he need to speak with me?
In your own testimony just now, you said that he has not met with you so far, and it's been 8 months now, correct?
Yes, and what I'm saying is that he doesn't need to meet with me to show that he's interested in science or to relay to me a request. You know, he's a busy person. He can
Have you met with any of the cabinet ministers since election?
Yes, absolutely, on a regular basis.
How about Ivan Solomon? Have you met with?
Yes.
Okay. How about Melanie Joly? Have you met with her?
Several times.
Has there been any incidents or times when your assessments or reports were delayed, edited, or vetted for by the government based on difference of opinions?
I just want to make sure I understand the question. You mean whether the government has...
Has there been times when you presented reports and they were not taken in as complete as your presentation, or have they edited them, or had they completely rejected those reports?
Like I said, I don't keep track of what they have taken from my recommendations or not. But I can say that by and large, my advice has they've listened to the advice. They've taken part of it as appropriate.
Do you think it make more sense if they would also provide feedback that, okay, your advice is good, we are going to implement it, we are going to listen it, given the stakes are so high that taxpayer money of $4.5 million is being spent every year in your office?
Madam Chair, the line
yes
of questioning is, I can't really address this. I was hired to do a job, and I'm doing the job, and I've been renewed twice. The last time I accepted to be renewed, the Liberal Party was 20 points behind. So I'm not playing, partisans here. I'm doing my job. So I just like, I want to answer properly, but I just find it very hard, to answer this line of questioning.
Thank you. I would request the members to be respectful of our witness and have questions in regards to the work which she is expected to do and the work which she has done as a Chief Science Officer.
Thank you for the interruption, Madam Chair. I personally believe that the line of questioning is not disrespectful. These are the genuine questions that Canadians have elected us here for to ask, especially given the stakes, as I keep saying, are higher. $4.5 million of taxpayer money is being given to one office every year, and we need accountability. And yes, people may not like it, but we have to ask it. Okay, I can move forward from that question. Has there been incidences or instances where you have been pressurized by the government to, say, bury down or delay your reports or advice?
No.
In the past, this committee also heard about many science issues, to name it, antimicrobial resistance, issues relating commercialization of IPs. Have you done any work regarding AMR or its commercialization?
I have not done work on AMR, but I'm assisting the government in the whole biomanufacturing file because, AMR is about resilience, about having new drugs, about, health. So
do you agree with
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up. Gave you that extra 1 minute which was lost. So we will now proceed to MP Bardesi for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Namer, for joining us today. I want to pick up on a question, a couple lines of questioning from Ms. McKelvey, but first, just want to ask a few questions about trust and mistrust in science, which is, I think, an issue you would probably see from a variety of perspectives. What are the trends that you're seeing in the broader population around trust or skepticism in science and the scientific enterprise, and what advice do you have to government on how policymakers should respond?
Well, trust in science is, of course, decreasing. Fortunately, it's decreasing not as fast in Canada as in other places, but we're not shielded. And I think this is where we need to make sure that we're transparent, that we actually bring the maximum number of people into the understanding of science and policy as well. And I don't think that lecturing the public is actually useful. So my advice has been that we need to create opportunities for people to engage with science, with data. I actually, my office put out a report, Sky Canada, on the observation of unidentified flying or aerial phenomena. And some people were surprised that we're dealing with this, but it was foremost to make sure that we gain public trust, that people don't think that there is, government is hiding something, etc. In government, I have ushered a science integrity policy that all government departments that have scientists have implemented to make sure that the science is done in a responsible manner, that scientists can speak publicly about their work. So there isn't just like one thing to do, there are a number of things, but I take trust in science and institutions very seriously, because when people start distrusting one thing, they generally distrust everything.
What are the more specific, you mentioned a decline in a lot of Western countries, not as much in Canada. What are the specific elements that are most concerning in the decline in trust that you are seeing? Is there a specific set of issues, a specific set of platforms where people are becoming misinformed, maybe a subject area that's more subject to mistrust or misinformation?
I think it's all of the above. of course, we've talked a lot on the health side about like the vaccine, for example, disinformation, but there are numerous others. We can say the same about climate change, forest fires. Some people think they were set on purposefully. So it's what the experts tell us is that once people start distrusting government or science, it's just like for everything. They don't distrust only on vaccine or only on climate. So it's very important to be proactive and to be engaging all the time in dialogue with the public, putting out the information, the science information that the public can then judge.
Thank you. I want to switch to an issue that Dr. McKelvey covered, or that you responded to in answer to a question, one of her questions around science diplomacy, and specifically in Horizon Europe. So can you just explain what's involved in Canada acceding to Horizon Europe and what kinds of specific benefits you think Canadian science can obtain as a result of that accession?
Yeah, well, Horizon Europe is a program of the European Commission for the European Union. So it's essentially for the European countries, and Canada was the second or third country after the UK, which is no longer in the European Union, and New Zealand to access actually the status of associate member. So it's not only about accessing funds, although this is very important, and networks of people working in science and innovation, because this is open also for the private sector. But it's also about sitting around the table and weighing on international priorities as well that will be acted upon for the next 10 years. So in many ways, it gave Canada a seat already around the table with the European Union.
Thank you. And we will now proceed to MP Blanchet-Jonker for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Nemeth, do you believe that the 2.5 cuts in the 2025 budget for granting institutes or organizations will strengthen research in Canada? In an ideal world, there are no cuts. The government took decisions. The granting agencies were spared because their cut was only 2.5 and not 15%. So that was a gain. It's easier to manage the 2.5% administratively and to make sure that the programs are not affected. You are happy that there was $7 million invested over 5 years to attract international talent in the budget. In the ecosystem, higher level scholarships were not indexed over the past few years. It's still 40% below the real cost of living. What I understand is that people are not happy. So let me give you an example. You take a plant and it's not watered. So how can it flourish? And then you go to other countries and you take a beautiful plant and you bring it here and you tell them, try to acclimatize to our environment, try to adjust. I'm afraid that those plants will not survive. They will die. They are not useful. And this is not helping us to strengthen innovation and science ecosystem in Canada. Do you believe that my understanding is lucid? That is one way of seeing things, the glass being half full. I would rather half empty. I would rather see the glass as half full. Well, this is a step in the right direction in considering a difficult fiscal environment. It's important for us to have a long-term plan, a game plan for science and innovation in the country. So why not take care of the potential we already have right here in home? Why do we always think that the grass is always green at the neighbors? Why don't we work with the scientists here in Quebec and Canada? All I can tell you is that we are being opportunistic, and that's not a bad thing. But certainly we must make sure that the system we have here, our young scientists those who are here remain here, and that there should be a fair system. Thank you.
I'll proceed to MP Baldinelli for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Niemer, for being here this afternoon. And in fact, in your opening remarks, I was pleased to take part in the Science Meets Parliament event and had the pleasure of sitting down with Professor Lawrence Goodridge from the University of Guelph. It was an excellent meeting. I want to quickly go to, on September 26th, the Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation announced the launch of an AI strategy task force and a 30-day national sprint that will help shape Canada's approach to AI. So were you asked to be part of that task force?
No, the task force is for people from outside, for stakeholders outside of government, and once their feedback is assembled, then I'll be consulted. I'm in discussions with Minister Solomon people because I represent Canada on an international AI committee. So, I'm in the file.
You've spoken to the minister on AI right now as part of this whole project and developing the strategy.
Well, the strategy is in development. We've spoken about the importance of having a strategy.
So if I can go to your comments again, you talk about collaboration must be grounded in a strong domestic foundation. If we want to remain at the forefront of innovation, we must have a long-term strategy that allows us to invest in Canada's science enterprise. You were speaking to an audience in Kyoto in October in 2025 in Japan. When you were speaking to them about AI, you had said, if we are serious about maximizing the benefits, we cannot afford to treat trust in AI as an afterthought. So I was just looking at these comments together, and 3 points I took. I mean, invest in Canada, strong domestic foundation, trust cannot be an afterthought. So I just want to go in December of 2024, and the government announced it was giving Cohere $240 million as part of the Canadian Sovereign AI Compute Strategy. They signed the MOU in August of 2025, and one of the first decisions that they took was to then hire an American company, CoreWeave. So I just want to see if I can get your comments on that. Do you think that's very Canadian and very sovereign?
My view is that we need to strengthen the Canadian, research and commercialization ecosystem, that we need to use our own people as much as possible. It may not be always possible, I don't know. And when it comes to AI, we need to have a framework that maintains trust without affecting innovation. So that's in a nutshell my view on AI.
Near the end of your comments in your opening remarks, you talk science is one of Canada's greatest strategic assets. On November 18th, 2025, the Council of Canadian Academies released a report titled The State of Science, Technology and Innovation in Canada 2025. One of its key findings noted the performance of Canada's business and government sectors continues to decline relative to other countries when it comes to science, technology and innovation. So why is the government sector underperforming when we consider that this government has spent so much in terms of money in recent budgets since the pandemic?
I agree with the assessment from, the CCA, and I wish I was surprised by it. The other countries are investing more. They've recognized that research and science and technology is the future, and they're just like putting more effort in it. In Canada, we have the added problem that the private sector is not investing sufficiently in research and development, and I believe you're doing a study on this, and I certainly look forward to it. It's extremely important because we can't count on government only to be, supporting research and development in the country. We need the private sector as well.
Council has put forward this report, but are you, in your capacity as science advisor, also making reports such as this, providing advice to the government with regards to what it should be doing in AI in other areas of science research in Canada?
Yes, absolutely, I am. And sometimes, and I mean, in both, general and specific areas as well. And I believe your colleague wanted to ask about IP and didn't get a chance. So, rest assured that my office actually, as we speak, is looking into the management of intellectual property in Canada, inside government and outside government as well. We have many programs, and they often have overlapping objectives, but they leave gaps as well. And what we need is a review of the entire pipeline.
Thank you. Time is up for MP Baldinelli, and we will now proceed to MP Sheetal for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Merci beaucoup et merci de...
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this committee. I am new. It's my first day replacing my colleague. Welcome, Madam Niemeyer. Our farmers produce the best food in the world. We have an extraordinary reputation, but they are dealing with extreme weather conditions that are more frequent, and they are aware of the importance of science, innovation, and technology to increase their production and to face all these challenges. I know that because of your mandate, the government's decision, the government relies on the best evidence to take decisions. How come the research we do, and there's formidable research being done in agriculture and agro-food, how come this is being done in silo? What can we do to make sure that this is no longer done in silos and that this is integrated in all that we do? Can you reassure our farmers that the government's decisions are based on research? Agriculture is something that is close to my heart. I was the very first person in government holding an important position to engage with agriculture deans in university, as well as an agriculture and agro-food cluster, because we have a golden opportunity here to demonstrate that climate and agricultural concerns or priorities can go together. Sometimes we pit agriculture against environment, and there's a lot of great things being done in the agricultural domain. What we need is better coordination. Every time, let me give you an example. I have prepared a roadmap for science for H5N1. I had to bring together 5 departments because people are working in silos. We need someone that brings everyone around the table for us to make sure that we are on the same page and that there are no gaps. And that's what silos create. And that's something my office is also doing. We want to be a convener and to make sure that there's no overlapping within the government. That's extraordinary. And I'm sure that farmers and business owners will be happy, because something I often hear is that there are silos in government and in research. So your office is able to convene universities, researchers, and innovators in our sector and the different departments, if I understand you well. Considering my role, which is an independent one, I convene the different people. So I'm not trying to favor one department over the other, but we try to see what is best for the country. Excellent. I have another question. With all that is going on in the United States and the way the American administration is treating its scientists, we see that many scientists there want to come to Canada, which has a government that is supporting science in all its decisions, because we believe that the best decisions are evidence-based, based on science. Have you seen that desire? Can your office do something to receive these scientists? Of course, scientists are welcome to universities, colleges, industry, but there is no doubt that personally, because I am a scientist myself, I started receiving calls last fall, not only from Canadians who are in the United States, but also from my counterparts in other countries who are telling me that their nationals occupying high-level positions in the United States wanted to come to Canada, and that bringing them to their offices, they told me, well, you can have them. And I said, absolutely. Do you have a special initiative to attract or bring most of these people?
MP Shatal, and we will have to proceed to our next round with MP Holman for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Niemer, for coming in today as a witness. First of all, I am the Member of Parliament of London Fanshawe, home of Fanshawe College, a great post-secondary educational institution, and that leads to my first question. So Fanshawe in London, Fanshawe College leads impactful, industry-driven research, the kind that directly benefits local employers and workers, yet college institutions constantly say federal programs are geared toward universities. What advice have you given to the government about redirecting or balancing funding to strengthen applied research capacity in college institutions, and why was that advice not translated into a more equitable national research strategy?
This is an excellent question, and let me assure you that I'm extremely sensitive to technology, to technologist graduates. If we want to reinvigorate our manufacturing sector, our industrial sector, we're going to need a lot of the technologists. And I have visited over the summer. I do this. I visit institutions, and I visited some colleges, and they have amazing, actually, applied research that they're training their students on it, and I think it's the right thing. So as we update, if you want, our ways of doing and to meet our objectives, I think that the colleges have a very important place to play, and that we should have, consequently more attention, I think, to the skills training that they provide and the programs that they have. Most of the time, they are more agile than universities.
Thank you, Doctor. Now a question about potential systematic disadvantages within federal funding systems. I want to turn to the role of DEI requirements in research applications. Current federal DEI requirements are intended to promote equity and inclusion, but smaller regional institutions may face challenges in fully meeting these criteria. Has your office assessed whether these requirements could unintentionally exclude high-quality research proposals, and what steps have you recommended to ensure that merit and innovation remain central in funding decisions?
This is a complex question. It's complex because I think that the principle of inclusion and diversity is one that we, that we all cherish and uphold, and it's a richness for the country. I think that the objectives of the programs need to be clear. So it's context dependent, and once the objectives are clearly, stated and actually accepted, I think it's how you go about the criteria and what you apply and when. So it's not that I don't want to answer your question, but I fear I don't have the specifics, but I guess it's not a one-size-fits-all, and we have to make sure that like in colleges and small institutions, we want to have people, students and professors from diverse horizons. So if an institution determines that they need, to diversify, then be it, and they need to have the proper criteria and approaches, but you can't do something that is wall-to-wall.
So may I ask, Doctor, like a what-if scenario. So if your office has identified a risk that DEI criteria could inadvertently disadvantage certain institutions, have you formally advised government to adjust these requirements?
Maybe I'll just say that I don't know who you mean by government, but it's, for example, the granting councils are the ones who determine, these things. I don't believe that it comes from higher up, other than the, perhaps principle of it. And we have these conversations about, ensuring that there is diversity, but that we're respectful also of, everyone who wants to contribute. So probably your question is better directed directly to them. I'm sorry to say this, but again, it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Okay. Again, thank you for answering the questions. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now proceed to MP McKinnon for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Doctor, for being here today. I appreciate your testimony. So in prehistoric times, I was a computer programmer. And in even more prehistoric times, I studied physics and math. I'm very interested in quantum computing, although I can't say I understand it. I wonder if you could advise us, give us a snapshot of what the state of the art is in terms of quantum computing, and how is the government, if the government is participating in that space, and how they're doing that.
I appreciate that you're not asking me to give you a lecture on quantum physics right now, because, I'm a chemist and a biologist. I do appreciate, however, quantum. I'll just say that, Canada is one of the top 5 countries when it comes to quantum. So we are, it's a real strength. Different parts of the world recognize this. We have industries as well that are in this in quantum, and I think it's really important that we continue to enable research, innovation, but also scale up of our quantum industry, so that we don't have to import the technology few years down the line, because the quantum revolution is now, and the technology is here, and it is going to revolutionize, many things, from drug discovery to space observation to many things. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I feel very strongly about quantum in Canada.
I guess I'm interested as well in what the government is doing in terms of advancing the research and development.
Yeah, the government has a quantum strategy and had invested in it last year. It covers many facets, from research to talent development and innovation as well. And it has even an international piece for collaboration. So I don't like to give my advice to government publicly, but given that I have already given this advice, I can say that my advice is that we need to double down on quantum. And just because it's a strength, it's not the time to withdraw, but rather to double down.
So do we, as government, participate directly in this kind of R&D, or do we mainly fund other kind of?
We fund academic researchers. There are some support for industry, but there is also some work that is being done within a government department. For example, at the National Research Council of Canada, at the Department of Defense as well, among others.
Okay. So you mentioned some of the areas where this could produce some actually big breakthroughs. You mentioned, medicines and so forth. This leads me to conjectures of things such as cold fusion. Are we doing anything in that area, irrespective of computing of quantum computing?
I have provided advice to government on the nuclear fusion, and I think. Nuclear fusion maybe where quantum was 10 or 20 years ago. So we're getting really close. And nuclear fusion, could provide answer to many of our energy needs. especially when we talk about data centers, AI, quantum, etc. We actually are one of the country that has the basis for more research and more innovation in the area of nuclear fusion. We even have a private sector company that's in this area, which is quite rare. Of course, we have resources as well with heavy deuterium that other countries would love to have. So it's my sincere hope that we will. It's an area that will get the attention that it deserves because it has huge potential.
Okay, great. That's my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now proceed to MP Blanchet-Jonker for 2.5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Nemer, we understand the geopolitical context as well as the scientific context where science is not only threatened but attacked and unfortunately denigrated. Some colleagues mentioned what is happening in the United States, but it's even here in Canada. What I find dangerous that we cannot reduce science to an economic or strategic tool to respond to a geopolitical context. We need, this should not be subject to the imperatives of the time, and that is what I'm reading from the current federal government. So I would like to know what you think. How do you define the importance of science? Because we hear territorial and economic sovereignty, but we never hear scientific sovereignty. What do you think about it? Well, scientific sovereignty is extremely important. It's something that Europeans are talking about, and they are doubling down when it comes to investments. Of course, I am of the opinion that politics doesn't bode well with science. We must always separate the two. Of course, fundamental research and even applied research is very important, and we never know what will happen. We talked about quantum science and even AI. 5, 10, 20 years ago, people who did that were mocked. So we need to continue doing that. Let's not forget that it's through science and fundamental science that we are able to get workers from all horizons. That being said, over the ages, science has demonstrated that it's a strong tool for economic prosperity because it creates innovation and so on. So the two are not contradictory, but you are right. Let's not see science only as an economic development tool. So we need a balance. So in this government, there's no balance. It's either everything or nothing. I understand that we're under pressure. And let me move on to another topic. What do you think that Canada could do? Can we have an independent mechanism like an audit office to analyze data to help assess the objectives and the impact of these policies as we see in other countries like Holland and Australia?
Oui, je voulais dire que c'est une idée intéressante.
I wanted to say that that's a good idea. It's part of the science ecosystem for public policy, which includes a scientific advisor, but also a scientific audit function. Madam Chair, could the witness please send us a very clear written response?
Well, Dr. Nemer, if you can provide a written response to this question, that will be great. Thank you. For 5 minutes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Nemer, so since you were appointed as Chief Science Advisor back in 2017, who sets your mandate? Is it the Liberal government?
The government says, I mean, it's the mandate of the position was set by the government, yes.
So I see it as part of your mandate, you were supposed to prepare an annual report to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Science on the state of federal government science. Is that correct?
Yes.
So do you know if the Prime Minister has read that report?
It's online.
But do you know if the Prime Minister has read that report? Because you're supposed to give this report to the Prime Minister.
Well, I haven't given it in person, but his office has received it.
Okay, but you don't know if he has personally read this report. You don't know. Okay. So I have a copy. So I have a copy of the annual report. There seems to be a lot of photos of conferences being attended, and a lot of photos, not a lot of content. I mean, see one of the pages here. It's all just images. So what is the measurable value of this report for taxpayers? I mean, we know there's a $4 to $5 million budget set aside, and one of the key parts of your mandate is to prepare this report. So how do we measure the value of this report? That seems like a scrapbook with a lot of images of conferences.
Well, with due respect, the report has a lot of content. The fact that we have illustrations and it doesn't take away from its value and its content. And it's, I don't know if you're expecting me to judge my own report. Perhaps you could ask others, how they're using it and whether it's valuable to them.
So, if your office stopped doing the work that it did, what exactly would stop working in the government? How would that affect the lives of everyday Canadians?
So I've just, earlier I'm going to give you a couple of examples, okay? So I gave the example of H5N1, the report here that we've provided on the science and the evidence that we need so that we can manage and prevent actually an epidemic. So to do this, I brought together 10 different departments. Some were doing things in isolation from others. Others didn't even, feel they needed to be part of this.
Report, on viruses and vaccines and all that, does not fall under the purview of Health Canada? Why do we need a separate office to justify?
Well, no,
they're the ones doing the work. They're the ones with the scientists.
It doesn't,
doctors.
because Health Canada, their mandate is health. When we're talking about H5N1, we're also talking about animal health. So we're talking about agriculture, about CFIA. We're talking about Environment Canada, about Parks Canada.
So
we're talking about
DFO. A bunch
DFO.
of agencies in your response. You just listed out a dozen agencies. That was your response. And so it sounds like those agencies already exist to do the work. And that's probably the objectives of those agencies, just CFIA, Health Canada, and all that. So how does your office add any value? Is it just another bureaucratic office?
We add a lot of value by bringing people together, actually by bringing a lot of experts from the outside. And you may be very interested to know that people work for us for free. So we've had hundreds of experts from academia and private sector work on our many...
I'm going to continue. Well, certainly your office doesn't work for free. I see, you were in a conference in Brazil in your annual report, so this happened recently. What exactly were you doing there? Who did you meet with?
There was the G20. I was representing the Minister of Science at the Science Ministerial for the G20.
And what did you accomplish there?
I represented Canada at a global forum that we are part of.
So you flew business class, presumably with some of your staff, and took a bunch of photos. But what can you even?
As a matter of fact,
other than meet?
Madam Chair, I just like to say that just because we have photo doesn't mean that we have 10 people traveling with us. As a matter of fact, on that particular trip, I had no staff with me.
Did you take business class on that trip too?
When I travel according to the directives of the government of Canada.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up for MP Ho, and we will now proceed to MP McKelvey for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Firstly, thank you for representing us on the world stage. Greatly appreciate that. Your background is molecular biology, so I cannot leave without asking a molecular biology question. So I'll ask two. The first is, can you speak to how you're interfacing with open science and what we should be doing in that sphere to report on human data of a molecular nature? And the second is, are you working in the space of synthetic biology, and do we need to be working towards common guidelines and goals as a country to make sure that we're using this technology for good as opposed to more nefarious purposes?
Well, thank you very much. Open science, actually, I'm a champion of open science. I've championed it in the country and internationally. Very concretely, I provided a roadmap for open science in 2020, actually, just before the pandemic. And we've gone systematically about it and resulting in the repository for open access repository for all the Government of Canada publications. So that's, I think, something also that's part of the trust building with the public. We have recently concluded an analysis and put out a report on now open data, because data governance is extremely important, research data governance, both for AI and also to get the most out of it. So that also is a public report now, and we're working with other colleagues in the system to move it forward. So open science, I have to say that Canada unfortunately was not a leader in open science, and I think that the work that I did helped us move the needle. With respect to synthetic biology, I think the interest in biotechnology, the renewed interest in biotechnology, is due to synthetic biology and CRISPR-Cas, etc. So I'm working with my counterpart in other countries, especially in the Five Eyes, to come to a harmonized and collective recommendations for our government.
I look forward to seeing that. I think that's extremely important right now. Some of the things we were talking about earlier with this committee was around research excellence and talking about the balance between fundamental discovery and more commercialization, industrial, or mission-driven research. So the AI strategy that we have, it's a great example, I think, of more mission-driven research. We have clusters across the country. I'm just wondering what sort of work your office is doing to monitor the Canadian state of science, and if you have recommendations around where our strengths are that we could really showcase to the world Canadian research and really dig down on more of mission-driven research. And I know MP McKinnon, touched on quantum, for example. So I was just wondering how you're working in that space to identify the strengths in the Canadian landscape of science.
Yeah, well, few years back, I actually convened several roundtables to see what we needed to do in terms of a renewed AI strategy. And in that, I had both the researchers and also the sectors that can potentially adopt. And the idea was to, find out what gaps actually exist or persist for the adoption and what specific research was still needed in specific sectors. And that's work that, has informed actually the government strategy on AI that is now being renewed again. And of course, I champion AI internationally when I'm representing the country. I think, when we talk about mission-driven, it doesn't mean that we don't need basic research in it. As a matter of fact, I was in conversations. I'm in touch with all the different hubs, the institutes. The AI Institute just visited the ones in Edmonton, and we actually need still a lot of AI research to be able to adopt research in other areas, but also for the transparency of AI. So I stay up to date, and like I said, I represent Canada on the international committee that just put out an update on the state of science of AI. So yeah.
I'll just use them to say thank you for coming.
Thank you, MP McKelvey. Now we will proceed to MP Mahal for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Nemmer. I have heard from the Liberal members and even yourself that you are a science advocate, and it's a government that is based on science. So I'm going to make that this government snatched, I think, over 4 or 5 years carbon tax from Canadians, from average Canadians like myself, yourself, or not yourself, but myself and other Canadians. And then they realized, okay, no, this doesn't make sense. It's not working out. So they backed on it. They backed down on it. They still continue to have plastic food packaging taxes and other taxes that are still driving up the cost on food and stuff. So my question to you is, because you are a scientist as well, did you have any input on those kind of strategies that government made? No. Have they ever consulted you on those kind of strategies before they making it? In regards to your appointment, you said that your appointment is a good behavior appointment. So what do you mean by good behavior appointment?
It means the government can't dismiss me without cause.
They can?
Cannot.
They cannot dismiss you without cause.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
That's an HR issue.
Okay. No. Yes. Briefly, you can tell.
Well, when people are appointed to certain positions in government, like deputy ministers and government in council appointees, they're generally appointed at pleasure, which means the government can ask them to leave anytime. There are few positions where people are appointed at good behavior, like the Auditor General and others, where you want to maintain the independence of the office. So you appoint them this way, so there is no political interference.
I see. So if the government wants to realize now that this office is not providing us the value that they should get based on $4 or $5 million of the expenditure every year they are spending on your office in particular, they cannot back on that because they are bound by a contract, correct?
No.
No? Okay. Okay, let's move on and talk about when you joined the office in 2017, you built about, you had a recent trip to Paris on, and the expenditure was over $8,000. You flew business class on that trip?
My travel is according to Government of Canada directives, are approved by the deputy minister, and I'm extremely conscious.
Was it economy or business class? Yes or no?
It's unimportant. I don't remember.
You don't remember?
No.
So I believe it was a business class, otherwise it would not have been $8,000 or over $8,000, correct?
Madam Chair, I don't know what to say.
I understand your hesitation. You're feeling difficulty in answering that question.
No, I'm not feeling difficulty, sir, but
it's obvious that $8,000 is not going to be an economy class. So I get that. Do you believe that that kind of expenditure is appropriate use of taxpayers' money? Yes or no?
Merci. Un appel au règlement, Madame la Présidente.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I think what is relevant is to look at the travel guide, the guide for travel for civil servants. We can present that to the committee. That may answer many of the questions being asked.
Mahal.
So I was saying that, do you believe that that kind of lavish trip of $8,000 per ticket are good use of taxpayers' dollars? Yes or no?
The international engagement is extremely important for...
That's not my question, madam. My question is, do you believe that an expenditure like $8,000 on taxpayer dollars is a fair use of taxpayer money? Yes or no?
I cannot answer the question yes or no.
Let's move on. You have billed over $316,000 in travel during that time. Do you think that that was a valid use of money, taxpayers' money? Yes or no?
Règlement, Madame la Présidente.
Point of order, Madam Chair. We have important subjects to discuss, science and so on. I think our witness was a point of order, Madam Chair. You said so yourself. We need decorum here. He's been asking the same question 5 times.
We, of course, 1% at a time. I'm speaking. MP Ho, I will request you to please let me speak 1% at a time. It becomes very difficult for the interpreters to do the translation if more than one person is speaking. We should keep the decorum in the House, but this is not a point of order. We have 30 seconds left with MP Mahal, please.
Chair, I believe my time was eaten out by multiple interruptions by the Liberal members.
I stopped the clock, so you have 30 seconds. Please go ahead.
Quick question. During that appointment, since your appointment, you have made over 20 trips to the Europe. Do you think that was part of your job? And do you think that justify taxpayer money that was spent on those trips based upon your trip that to Paris was over $8,000?
Madam
Yes or
Chair,
no?
Travel was part of the job description. In fact, it said that the candidate needed to be willing to travel.
Does it have to be in a business class?
Time is.
I'd just like to finish, if you don't
yeah,
mind.
please go ahead.
Because it's the travel is an easy target, but I'd like to say that my travel is absolutely is.
You have asked the question. She is responding. Let her finish, please. Yeah, let her finish. Like, I've given her the floor, so let her finish, please.
So my travel is consistent with that of my counterparts, and in fact, including my counterpart in Quebec, in Canada, and I think that there is a lot of benefit that come out of these the travel. But the point is, it's consistent with the job, and it's consistent with that of other international counterparts.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying. We will proceed to MP Bardesi for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to follow up on that conversation briefly, Dr. Namer. In your view, could you just describe? We're using these terms, science diplomacy, and we're talking about these trips. What is science diplomacy?
Well, I guess science diplomacy can be different things. It can be maintaining the dialogue with countries to advance the interest of our country, and that's certainly part of what I do. Science diplomacy is also enhancing international collaborations, enhancing trade, enhancing innovation. It's also making sure, because science is international, that you have first-hand experience and sight of what else is happening in the world. Like if Canada wants to upgrade its nuclear reactor or its light source in Saskatchewan, the best thing is to see what's happening in similar, installations across the country. So, but that's also science diplomacy. So it's, people helping each other to advance science, but also science helping to advance the country's interest.
Thank you. If Canada had not done science diplomacy, would we have acceded to associate membership of Horizon Europe? If we had done no scientific diplomacy whatsoever, would we be in Horizon Europe today?
Absolutely not.
And could you, I know that Horizon Europe is a very large program, and there's, but you in your earlier testimony, you described the kind of general pool of funds that Canadians can get access to. Around what order of magnitude would that be for funds for Canadian researchers?
We're talking, over $2 billion probably a year.
So that seems like a pretty good value for money for science diplomacy to get access to this kind of, and that's just the research funds.
Yeah. And I have to say modestly that I played a very important role in there. I initiated the discussions and the conversations with the European Union. I used my network from my science, days, and the rest is history, as they say.
And I think you just said earlier, just to be clear, there's only 3 other countries that are not European Union countries that are currently associate members of Horizon.
Well, now there is South Korea as well. That's all.
Thank you. I want to pick up on, and I just want to note, I guess, that you're noting that the broader benefits to science diplomacy includes nuclear cooperation and nuclear investment, which is a very international market.
Absolutely. I mean, even AI and quantum are international. So, and we can do it alone. So we do need to work with allies, with countries that are strong, but like us are not cannot by themselves compete with the two giants.
I want to pick up on some of the questions Mr. Baldinelli was asking around the Canadian Council of Academies report and the state of science investment and its role in innovation policy. And I think we share a concern about the lack of downstream investment that comes from the scientific investments that we do make into commercialization, into economic benefit. Broadly speaking, what policy advice do you have for us in this committee with respect to that issue?
Yeah, it's a very important question, and I think that what we suffer from is another case of the silos, of the research being on one side and then the commercialization being on another, so industry on the one side and then the academic, and we have like valleys of death, not just one but two actually, from moving discoveries that are at the university to innovation. Because we need to have programs for proof of principles, we need to have support for IP protections and so on. So we need to get more granular into where the leakiness in the pipeline is and have a more holistic, systematic approach to it.
My last question, which is different from the other ones, it has to do with research in French. We know that the government has a goal to promote research in French. Do you have any opinion on how that objective will be attained? Yes, I already shared with this committee recommendations, and that was last year. I had discussions with Minister Joly on this as well earlier. What is happening is that we are waiting for a report from the expert committee at Heritage that was prepared on research in French, and from then I will see how I can help. But already my office is looking into possible solutions. Very well, thank you.
To MP Blanchet-Gianca for 2.5 minutes.
Madame la conseillère, le gouvernement s'est donné le pouvoir.
Madam Advisor, the government decided to exempt all laws except science for various types of projects, including pipelines. Were you consulted to make sure that those projects will be subject to rigorous scientific and independent assessments? That's a very important question. I already approached the CEO of the Major Projects Office to start discussions with her to see how I could help her, how my office can support her, because science is going to be important to tell us what the risks are and to give us options and so on. Yes, we are engaged. So for now, you were consulted, you provided scientific recommendations concerning the list of major projects on the table. No. If the federal government could circumvent most acts to accelerate these projects, how can we make sure that particular scientific factors, particularly in Quebec, will not be sacrificed because they want quick solutions? Let's hope that science will be a factor, and I trust that there are many people who are monitoring what is going on. I will do my part. In that context, how can science become an obligation and not just an option for the government? I believe the only thing is to have legislation, be it for the position of the science chief scientist, as was the case in Quebec, and I believe you know, and also, but you understand what I'm saying. We need a law and then we exempt ourselves from the law. A mechanism that allows the government to circumvent the legislation. Is this not a danger? I don't know what to say. It's like a nightmare. Thank you for your transparency and for your frank responses. Anything to add related to that?
We now proceed to MP Holman for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Niemer, for, again, being a witness for this committee. I want to discuss about barriers preventing Canadian innovation. So we've heard for years that Canada exists in research, but ranks near the bottom in turning that research into products, companies, and jobs. This is not a new problem. It is an unaddressed one. Canada has excellent academic research, but a poor track record of commercialization. So, Doctor, in your view, what specific federal policies are failing, and why hasn't your office been more forceful in pushing government to remove the barriers preventing Canadian innovations from reaching the market?
This is a question that is very dear to my heart, and the problem is that we have many programs. We don't have we have a number of policies. The objective is good, but I'm not certain that all these policies actually work together. On the one hand, on the other, for as long as I can remember, successive governments of different colors have actually tried to tackle this. So I think that we need a transformative thinking on it. And, I was mentioning that, we need to be both holistic, systematic, but also gradual, because in different sectors, the problem is different. And what works for one doesn't work for other. The ecosystem in Canada, the industrial ecosystem, is very different from other countries that we try to compare ourselves to. So I am, of the view that we need a science, technology, and innovation strategy where we state clearly, our objective of invigorating the research, but also of enhancing the translation into public good, and go about it. See what is it that we have that is useful, what is it that's not working, and then change it.
So a follow-up question, Doctor. So your advice that that your office may give, if the federal government continues possibly to ignore that advice on commercialization bottlenecks, are you prepared to publicly identify which departments or policies are impeding that progress?
I'm not saying they're ignoring my advice. We're right now taking pieces of it and we'll be providing advice. And by the way, the advice will be also, the reports will be made public. So I think that the government is seized with that, and my conversations within the Department of Industry, they're certainly trying to review all the, different programs and trying to get a more harmonized approach to that. I think we all want to see, impact of the investments. There's no question about it. It's just that we have to accept that we need to do things differently.
Okay, thank you for answering that question, Doctor. Another question, sort of a different topic on hand, but as Chief Science Officer, you assess and recommend improvements to federal scientific infrastructure and the science workforce, including in high-demand fields such as artificial intelligence. Canada faces acute shortages in AI-enabling infrastructure such as data centers, grid capacity, and compute resources, exacerbating the brain drain talent to the U.S., as highlighted in previous R&D studies. What is your office recommending Canada do to ensure we retain our scientific talent?
We've strongly recommended, and the government has, started, looking into the resilience, the sovereignty for the data centers, the compute. We have a long ways to go. I mean, we're competing with the IBM and the Google of the world, but it's important. It's our future that depends on it. But we need the industry to work hand in hand with the government as well.
Okay, and we'll continue with another AI question, Doctor. Are there guardrails, conditions on new budget spending around artificial intelligence to ensure that the funds actually have economic benefit to Canada? For example, Huawei received $100 million in R&D funding after their tech was banned in this country. We need to ensure taxpayer dollars benefit Canada, not China or the competitors. So again, are these funds in the budget actually have economic benefit to Canada?
I can answer when it comes, to on the research side, that all these programs have to undergo Treasury Board submission, to be able to expend the money, and whatever government guidance, ought to be there. Again, I'm personally of the view that we need to invest in our people and in our organizations as much as possible, and that's a view that I held before even taking this role here.
Thank you. We will now proceed to MP Chehtal for 5 minutes. Please go ahead. MP. Yes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nemar. Since we are both passionate about agriculture and agri-food, I'll continue on that topic. And I must tell you that your role is absolutely essential because there are very few sectors that are as innovative as the agriculture sector, because they are facing constant challenges from nature that is becoming more and more capricious. And for us to prosper, we must innovate, find innovative soil solutions. How can we find plants that are more resistant to drought, for example, to floods as well, and new technologies? We heard a lot about artificial intelligence as well, and this is being used in Canadian farms. We are also talking about the reduction of methane and new innovative tractors. I would like to come back to that because in my sector, I've heard a lot about innovation in universities and in the farms. Agriculture Canada has research centers. Health Canada also has research. Environment Canada is engaging in research as well. And your mandate is to break down silos. So I would like to hear you tell us more specifically how your office can help break down those silos in research. Let me start by saying that for years now, we have made recommendations, and we saw this during COVID and with the avian flu. We wanted the approach One Health, the One Health approach. This concerns the health of soils, animals, and human health are all interrelated. So these sectors have to work together. Already, we are promoting this One Health approach. But the agriculture sector is one of the most interdisciplinary sectors because there is biology, engineering, social sciences, human sciences involved. And that is why I believe that over the years, they have not benefited as much as they should have benefited from grants because it's interdisciplinary. We don't hear a lot. When we talk about specialized workforce, we don't think about agriculture and agri-food. Whereas it's very important for them. There are shortages in that sector. So universities have to work with governments. Provinces also have an important role to play in that sector. Farmers themselves have to promote that sector. So I think we can do more instead of selling our soils. We can, instead of selling our soya, we can process it here. I'm very interested in your recommendations. What are you recommending to the government? What sectors could better optimize the innovations taking place throughout the country, but sometimes in isolated ways? I think your observation will be the same as for producers. What are your recommendations? This is a large country, and this is a sector that is very diversified. I need to think about that more, but I can do so with pleasure. Please, when you do that, please send your recommendations to the committee. Now, let me come back to the G20. Innovation is not being done in one single country. It's being done in collaboration with scientists from all over the world. We talked about your representations abroad. I worked at the OECD. I know to what extent it's an innovation center in many sectors. So could you tell us about your experience? Could you tell us what you go do abroad? The OECD is a good example. I have a lot of discussions with them. As a member, Canada could also commission studies that interest us, comparative studies with other countries, and so on. It's the OECD that hosts the Secretariat for GPAD, which is the AI initiative that we started when we were chair of the G7. We started that with France. We have to work hand in hand with those institutions.
Now we will have 5 minutes each for each party, and we will have MP Baldinelli and then MP Turnbull, and we will end the panel with MP Blanchet-Juncker. MP Baldinelli for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Nemmer, for again your time here this afternoon, your patience, and your answers. I want to go back to the report in November that was released from the Council of Canadian Academies. And within that, they noted Canada faces a worsening productivity crisis, a shifting and potentially diminishing relationship with its largest trading partner, stubbornly low private sector R&D spending, and lackluster technology adoption across the country. We had spoken earlier. You said there was much in there that you agreed with in the report, sadly. And, you know, as the report concluded, it says a high-performing science, technology, and innovation ecosystem is essential to the well-being of all people in Canada. So are you concerned about the declining productivity and the living standards of Canadians?
Yes, absolutely. We're all affected. I'm concerned that our private sector is not, either innovative enough or doesn't adopt innovation for the different reasons that were given in the reports, some of which we could, discuss for a long time, things like it's not, applicable to them, etc. I think that, we need to have a big push in terms of productivity, and this is where science and technology can help a lot. But you need skilled people, for that to go in these companies and do what needs to be done. And you need to, to keep companies here that are in the innovative space.
Now, Dr. Nemmer, you've been here, you've held office since 2017, and considering the diminishing results that continue to plague the government, is the government listening to the recommendations and views that you're putting forward, would you suggest?
I would say that the productivity issue is, we've had it for a long time. Unfortunately, we don't seem to be able, to shake it off. And I'm not here to defend one sector or the other, but we have an industrial sector that is extremely risk averse, and they need to innovate. So my advice is not always, only to government.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes I think that it's
Can I
good.
just build on that?
Yes.
Thank you for that. Because in terms of the private sector, last week when we had hearings here, we had the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association and the Big Three, which represent the Big Three automakers. And they invest in 2024, $898 million in R&D. And in 2023, $830 million. Yet sometimes government bureaucracy stands in the way of what they're trying to accomplish. For example, the government through CBSA has implemented what they call the CARM system. And that CARM system is the CBSA Assessment and Revenue Management System. They implemented it last year in October. And since that time, it's never worked properly. We're talking about $500 million that this government has committed to this project, and it has never worked properly. In fact, if you look at the contracts, I don't even think the government owns the technology outright. So when we heard this coming from the big three automakers saying they're having difficulties through that system, just acquiring a temporary import letter to bring in vehicles so they can do the research on these vehicles and then ship them back to the United States. Is this something that concerns you? Is this something that you can take some action with through your office to make recommendations to the government, saying you're putting roadblocks in the way of almost $1 billion in private sector investment in Canada, which needs to be corrected? They made the mistake by implementing something that never worked properly, and they're standing in the way. They're helping to drive away private sector investment in Canada.
Nothing, to do with it. It sounds like a complex issue with the borders and duties and whatnot. But I'll just say that sometimes academics have also suffered from some of these, importation rules for samples and others, and perhaps I might take a look and with the colleagues at Border Services of what's going on.
And lastly, if I could, again, the government had asked its government department and agencies to see if it could find savings of 15% over 3 years. Does that impact your operations in your office?
Yes, it does. We have budget cuts like others.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, how much time?
2 seconds. Thank you. We will now proceed. Yeah, thank you for your time. We will now proceed to MP Turnbull for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Great, Chair. Thanks for having me. I'm visiting this committee, but I was on this committee for a while. And, Doctor, you visited our committee numerous times while I was on it, and always appreciated your testimony and your expertise and the critical role that you play as the Chief Science Advisor here in Canada. We believe in science. We want to see the scientific community, the research ecosystem grow, prosper, develop, and see wider adoption and uptake of the innovations that are, often stem from scientific research, but eventually can work their way out into our industries and contribute to the lives of Canadians and the standard of living that we all enjoy and improving it. I want to ask you about the research security framework, though. I know members opposite have brought up a comment about Huawei, and I know our government did considerable work when I was Parliamentary Secretary to Industry to implement a national security set of guidelines to ensure that the Tri-Council and that any applications for federal research dollars has to go through a rigorous approval process. Could you speak to that very briefly?
Yes, I think that few years back we looked into research security, especially in academic settings and within the government, because the reality is that the industrial sector doesn't need any lessons, from us, because they know all about industrial espionage and so on. But for academic institutions, they didn't have necessarily the expertise to do it. So the government has put forward I think a comprehensive approach, which includes both supporting universities and researchers in terms of training and some resources, but also clear indications of which technologies and which that we can or cannot collaborate, and which institutions. And in fact, our policy is one of probably the most comprehensive, and we've had the Europeans, the Japanese, and even the UK, come to see what we're doing and to emulate it.
Thank you very much for that. I want to pivot now to talk about the SHRED program. and which is a sort of a workhorse for research and development. It offsets the cost for lots of companies to do research and development and innovate within their companies. Our government in Budget 2025 has proposed a number of changes to modernize that program. Would you say that those would contribute to the wider uptake of science and research across the ecosystem?
I was on the committee on the industry strategy committee, and all I heard from the private sector is that they appreciated the program, but they wanted it reformed. So I think that the changes are probably welcome by the group. That's all I can say.
This is what we've heard as well, but
Yes.
I wanted to see whether you were hearing the same, so thank you for that. Typically, when we talk about the research ecosystem, there's a lot of focus on universities and the important role that they play, and I would never diminish that. But there's also other post-secondary institutions, colleges and polytechnics across the country, who also, I think, play a very crucial role, especially at this moment in time. When we're wanting greater uptake of applied research and ensuring that, commercialization is moving forward at a more rapid pace, perhaps, than it has in the past. Can you speak to the important role that colleges and polytechnics play?
I think they play a very important role, and just because in the past perhaps they didn't do enough research doesn't mean they shouldn't be doing research, because if they're training the workers, they better train them on the latest machinery, the latest technologies, etc. So we all have an imperative and a stake in the game. So I think that and I think in addition to that, because they have shorter programs, and we talk about reskilling and, whether scientists reskilling them for AI or data science, etc. So I think that they can play an increasingly important role, and we need to enable them. But again, it's a collective effort of many levels of governments.
Thank you. Squeak in one last question, or no? Am I out of time? It's okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. Great to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will now end this panel with MP Blanchet-Dianka for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
5 minutes? 5 minutes? Wow, merci beaucoup, Madame la conseillère.
Thank you very much. Madam Advisor, Mark Carney said that most fossil reserves should remain in the soil to respect climate targets. Now, he changed seats, became prime minister, and now he's supporting new oil and gas infrastructure projects. So scientifically, the addition of all these hydrocarbons projects, is this consistent with the recommended targets? Science doesn't tell us exactly what to do. But when we have an objective, science helps us to find options. I believe that the climate issue is extremely important, is becoming increasingly important, but the energy transition needs to be better designed and adopted. I don't believe that overnight we will have a network or a fleet of electric cars. So we need to be consistent, but we need to be decisive. But we need a clear direction. What are we trying to do? And the timeline. What I understand is that in science, hydrocarbons exploration will generate greenhouse gases, and that will be a problem. Of course, that will create a problem. So if we pump more oil, like in the West, it's transported through a pipeline, and the oil is intended for exportation, and it's not for Canadian consumption. Is it true to say that more greenhouse gases will be emitted, and this will also create more greenhouse gases and provoke more climate change?
What science says is that oil exploration produces greenhouse gas emissions. Science also tells us that the transition towards different transportation modes and renewables Exporting hydrocarbons, well, is that a renewable energy? Science tells us it's not renewable. Can you guide us? What do you recommend for the government or population? What type of energy should we prioritize for the energy transition? It's a complex question, of course, but some energies are better suited for the transition. Liquefied gas, natural gas, for example. And yes, we do have options. It all depends on what we have. In an ideal world, we would like to have energy sovereignty. We don't want to depend or have to depend on anyone else. But we also want to export energy, and preferably renewable energy. Now, how the governments will undertake this, I think it's a question that goes beyond science. Yes, I understand. According to the information I have, Canada produces a little bit more, 4 million barrels a day, most of which are exported to the U.S. We don't even have refineries in Canada to process the tar sands, for example. Oh, so what's it all worth? I'm trying to understand this economically and scientifically. Economically, we know, well, it fills out the, it makes some players very rich and makes them even wealthier, keeps these shareholders happy, and maximizes profit. Brookfield, for example, that are very close to the Prime Minister, but also very close to these nation-building projects. I'd like to focus on science. How can we think that national interest or nation-building projects are important if they don't even pass the test of environmental and scientific assessments? How can we tell them they're good projects? They're good for the wallet, but not for the planet. I'm not sure, but I haven't seen another planet for sale on Amazon or Marketplace, so I'd like to hear your point of view as a scientist. From a scientific perspective, we talked about major projects, and we have to assess risks, impacts, and it's a question of balancing out risk and benefits. But there is a way to mitigate the negative impacts of any project, and I hope that science will be used, will be put to good use in this situation, because, of course, we want to develop major projects to build our nation. The rapid train, for example, which is very near and dear to my heart. Is Rimouski on that line? Trois-Rivières? Yes.
And I really would take this opportunity to thank Dr. Nemmer for appearing before the committee and providing your testimony. And is it the will of the committee to be adjourned? Yes. Okay. So the meeting is adjourned.